If n8n doesn't have a pre-built node for the service that you want to connect to, you also have the ability to post your data to your n8n instance via something called a webhook. Many online services out there will provide you with the ability to post submissions or post data or events out to a webhook. And I'm going to share with you how we do that. So I'm going to create a new workflow. And my first step on my trigger event here is going to be on a webhook call. Now once the node is opened, n8n then gives us a number of different parameters that we need to complete. Firstly is the HTTP method, and you will get a number of different options here. Normally, and in most cases, it is the post method that we will require. This is simply stating that we are going to send a post request to n8n. The path option is the part that goes after the final part of the webhook. This gives it its identity, if you like. And you are more than welcome to use the path that has been pre-created for you, but if you want to make it easier to remember, you can change this to whatever you want. So I'm going to call this, for the sake of this video, test webhook. And you can see now that test webhook has appeared in the post option at the top of the screen. If you're going to do this in a very, very straightforward way, sorry, I just need to correct that. In a very, very straightforward way, this would be enough. So to demonstrate how this works, I'm going to use a simple postman request just to show you the data coming in. So I'm going to leave this in test for the time being, and I'm going to select or click on my URL here to copy the URL, and I'm going to set this to now listen for a test event. And I'm going to head off to my postman, which I've kind of got pre-set up here already. I'm going to set this to a post event, and I'm going to paste in my URL which I've just created. I'm going to create some parameters. And I'm going to send this off to my n8n instance. So it says here that workflow was started, and if I head back to n8n, we can now see that the data I sent has been sent into my instance. And as we have seen previously, once you have done that, you can then start to use any other nodes to the right of this to begin to drag in the data and connect it to your additional services. The problem with what we have done so far means that if anybody has the URL that you've created, they can send data to your webhook. To prevent that, you may want to secure it by using some form of authentication. And the webhook node gives us the ability to do that. And that's done in the authentication section just here. n8n gives you 3 different options of how you can secure your webhook. You can either use basic oath, header oath, or JWT oath. Let's take a look at how these would work and in my postman request. So if I was to select basic oath, I need to create a new credential for it. I'm just going to click up on here and call this basic oath so I know exactly what it is. And essentially what I do here is create a username and password. So I'm just going to, for the sake of this, use username for the username and password for the password. Not very secure, I know, but it's easy enough for the sake of this video. And we're going to click on to save here. Now, if I put this back to listen for test event, go back to postman and try and send it, you'll see now that it says that authorization is required. Many webhooks which you will create in your services will ask you potentially for some form of authorization. So in my case here in Postman, it's asking for basic auth, so I need to change this to basic auth. And then I set up username and password as the username and password. Now if I try and send it, you can now see that workflow was started and the data has appeared in n8n as expected. The other options here then are to use something called header authorization or header auth. If your webhook doesn't give you the ability to use basic, then it may well ask you to use header. And the way we do this then is again to create a new credential. And name and value here isn't a username and password, but these are the options that you'll need to build into your header. So I'm going to call this n8n auth, and I'm going to give this a value. I'm just going to use password again, just for the sake of the video, and click on to save. I'm going to pop this back into listen for a test event. I'm going to head back to Postman, and I'm going to change this here to no auth because I don't need that authorization. Now I need to add it into my header. So in my header, I'm going to put n8n auth. That was the parameter that I created, and the value was password. And if I try and send this now, I should get the workflow was started option, and we will find that my data has yet again appeared in n8n. JWT auth means that we need to create a token in this case. So I'm going to do this for you now. So I'm going to again create a new credential called a JWT auth account. It's a passphrase that we need to use here and a secret. Now essentially you can make whatever you want appear. I'm just going to keep this real simple again and set it as password. But this time there is an algorithm involved because this is going to be hashed and it's going to be secured. So I'm going to save this. Again, I'm going to put it back into listen for test event. Head back to Postman. I'm going to remove this header because we don't need that anymore. And I'm going to change my authorization to JWT bearer. We set the algorithm before, remember, at HS256. My secret I set as password. And again, if I now try and send this, we'll get a workflow was started. And you can see again that my data has now appeared in n8n as expected. So that's how you can secure your webhook. One option that you might need to consider is that you have created one workflow for multiple different services. So for example, you might have connected Typeform and Airtable and contact forms, for example, and you want all of these things fired towards one particular workflow. Or the other option here is you just want to use one set of credentials for all of your workflows. That means you need to find a way of working with your authentication, but using lots of different services. So as an example, let's say you have created authentication as basic auth, the username and password that we created before. But the service that you're connecting with will only allow you to use a header authorization. Now, this is still possible, but we need to do something different. And I'm going to share with you how to do this. So for now, I'm going to save this. And I'm going to create very quickly a new workflow for the sake of this example. The reason I need to do this for is because if you're sending username and password via a header, it needs to be sent in base64 encoded string. Technical, I know, but it's pretty straightforward to do. So to make this work, I'm just going to add a trigger, and I'm just going to use a trigger manual here because I don't need anything incoming. And what I now need to do is to create a piece of code that's going to take a username and password, and it's going to encrypt it in base64 string. So to do this, I'm going to use a code node. And I've created a simple piece of code that's going to allow me to do this. If you click on the link in the description, that will take you off to the relevant page on our website for this. You can copy and paste this code or the node if you want to directly pop this in. So I've got a couple of constants here at the top and the code underneath to turn this into a base 64 string. So I'm going to change this username bit here to my username that I used. So this was username. And I'm going to change my password to password. Again, you will need to use whatever your username and password that you created in your basic auth in here. And I'm going to run this as a test step, and what it'll do now is spit out this authorization header, basic, and a string of numbers and text. And I'm going to copy this, and I'm going to head back to my original webhooks, my test webhook. I've got this now set to basic auth. Listen for a test event. I'm going to head back to Postman. I now need to make sure that my authorization is set to no authorization, and I need to add in a new header. In this case for n8n, it is authorization, and then I need to paste in the code which I created. So we need basic space and the base 64 string afterwards here. And if I now click on to send, we'll get workflow was started, and data is now available in n8n. The Postman option here gives me the ability to generate the queries. In some cases you won't have this option, and what will happen is the service that you were firing the webhook data from will send you basically everything. So to give you an example of what this looks like, I'm going to listen for another test event, and I have a simple type form set up. I've just got to the end of this now with 3 bits of data of first name, last name, and email address. Because I don't have any authentication set up on my type form, I'm going to flick this to none. Set this to listen for test event. Head to my form. It's almost ready to submit here, so I'm just going to click on to submit. And you can now see that all of the data has landed into n8n. What you'll get here now is literally the headers that they send and the body, which is where all of the information is going to be held. And you can see here that my answers, text demo, demo@demo.com is down here. And if I want to use that in a future node, as we have always done previously, we can just send body here to give an example. We just pull over the information that we need into these next fields. So we're going to go to answers here. I want the text that was added in the value, and you can see here it pulls over demo. So using webhooks gives you a massive amount of flexibility in getting data into your n8n instance. It's really versatile and flexible, and once you've got the information into n8n, then you can do absolutely anything you would like with it. I really hope you found this video helpful. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel, and I look forward to seeing you in another video in future. Thanks for now.